Okay, think about the biggest power players in global politics today. You might actually be missing a massive, multi-billion-dollar partnership that's flying completely under the radar. Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really powerful geopolitical bond that directly impacts billions of people across the global south. And as you'll see, it is a partnership that perfectly proves how a deeply rooted, shared history can set the stage for a seriously prosperous future.
You know, Nelson Mandela actually hit the nail on the head regarding the deep ideological kinship between these two regions. He famously said, "You gave us Mohandas Gandhi, we gave you the Mahatma." It was actually on African soil that Gandhi really developed and refined his famous principles of nonviolence, or satyagraha. And those exact principles went on to inspire visionary African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and of course Mandela himself. That profound emotional connection is literally the historical bedrock of their relationship today.
So here is our roadmap for This Explainer. We're going to look at the winds of history, shared visions for tomorrow, fueling economic growth, solidarity in crises, and finally, a shared global future.
Section 1. The Winds of History. From ancient monsoons to shared colonial struggles. Let's dive right into that historical bedrock we just talked about. Before modern diplomacy was even a thing, nature itself actually acted as the ultimate connector. For millennia, the predictable, rhythmic reversal of monsoon winds across the Indian Ocean was like a giant natural conveyor belt. It meant ancestors from both regions were constantly interacting. They weren't separated by the ocean, they were connected by it, swapping cuisines, philosophies, folklore, and trade goods long before modern borders were ever drawn.
And you can trace how this relationship evolved over time. It starts with those ancient maritime connections, moves through a really somber era of shared colonial struggle, and then pivots in 1963 with the founding of the Organization of African Unity. That was a huge turning point. It gave institutional life to Pan-Africanism and allowed India and newly independent African nations to start engaging as confident, sovereign equals, leading straight into today's modern strategic partnership.
Moving right along to Section 2, Shared Visions for Tomorrow, where sovereign equals are aligning their futures. It is absolutely fascinating how culturally in sync these two regions are. Take the ancient Indian philosophy of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which basically translates to the world is one family. Now pair that with the African philosophy of Ubuntu, meaning I am because we are. They share this inherent deep-seated belief in global solidarity. And that isn't just a fun poetic coincidence. This philosophical harmony actually drives their modern diplomatic decisions.
And we see this philosophy translating directly into real, ambitious blueprints for the future. India is pushing for Viksit Bharat 2047, aiming to be a fully developed nation by their centennial of independence. At the exact same time, Africa is driving towards Agenda 2063. These aren't just isolated pipe dreams, They are complementary, parallel strategies being executed by nations that fully intend to rise together.
Which brings us to Section 3. Fueling economic growth and translating all this historical goodwill into a multi-billion-dollar engine.
$93 billion. Just let that number sink in for a second. That was the bilateral trade volume between India and Africa last year alone. Make no mistake, we are looking at one of the most significant and rapidly expanding trade corridors in the entire global south.
Now, when you look at India's cumulative investments, which top $80 billion, it's highly diversified. This isn't just about extracting raw materials, not at all. We're talking about setting up vital telecommunications, energy grids, pharmaceuticals, infrastructure, agriculture, and digital services. These are investments that fundamentally modernize local economies and shift global supply chains.
But to really get the strategy behind all this money, you have to understand the Kampala principles. Outlined in 2018, these 10 guidelines legally and ethically make Africa a top priority for India. And here is the crucial distinction. The growth is strictly demand-driven. Unlike traditional foreign aid that often comes with a bunch of strings attached or outside blueprints, India focuses on building exactly what Africa asks for, prioritizing local capacity and mutual benefit.
So what does this actually look like on the ground? Well, it's over $10 billion in lines of credit across 40-plus countries. It's more than 220 completed projects worth $4.5 billion. But honestly, perhaps the most impactful part is the human element. We're talking over 80,000 scholarships in just the last 11 years, and actually opening physical tech campuses like IIT Madras in Zanzibar. That is a profound, long-term investment in human capital.
All right, Section 4, Solidarity in Crises.
because a true bond really has to hold up under pressure.
And wow, does this one hold up? When things get tough, India consistently steps in. Whether it's addressing food security by supplying food grains to 9 nations, like Burkina Faso, Mozambique, and Nigeria, or sharing expertise to revive millet production. On the medical front, they've sent disaster relief to over 25 African countries recently, and even pledged a $10 million medical package to the Africa CDC to help fight the Ebola outbreak. That is practical, life-saving solidarity.
Then there's the geopolitical security side of things, anchored by Vision Mahasagar. Mahasagar actually means ocean. This is their foundational framework dedicated to keeping those historic sea lanes safe from piracy and boosting maritime domain awareness. It's honestly a really poetic, powerful commitment to protect the exact same oceans that first connected them thousands of years ago.
In this maritime vision is backed by extensive on-the-ground defense training. You've got Indian military teams actively building capacity in places like Mozambique, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and Namibia. Throw in professional training from multiple nations and massive joint military exercises, both multilateral and bilateral, and you ensure that their booming economic ties are well protected.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, a shared global future, and how they are actively shaping the 21st century world order.
The sheer scale of India's expanding diplomatic footprint in Africa is incredible. It highlights a deliberate, sustained strategy. I mean, they've conducted over 150 high-level visits in just a decade. Add to that the opening of 17 brand-new diplomatic missions, bringing their total to an impressive 46 resident missions across the continent. They aren't just talking about a partnership from afar. They are putting boots on the ground and building permanent bridges. And all of this beautifully culminated in a massive victory during India's G20 presidency. They successfully pushed to integrate the African Union into the G20 as a permanent member. Why does this matter? Because it proves India is using its own geopolitical weight to elevate its historical partner. They are fighting to give the Global South a permanent voice at the highest tables of global influence, alongside their mutual advocacy for a reformed UN Security Council.
Which leaves us with a pretty profound question to think about. With a shared history spanning millennia, overlapping cultural philosophies, and a combined population of billions, how will the India-Africa partnership fundamentally reshape the 21st century world order? The seeds that were planted during ancient trade routes and watered by shared colonial struggles have officially blossomed into a modern superpower partnership. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep questioning how our shared history continues to shape our world today.